Welcome to my video about definitions and writing of expanded definitions. So I started out with some notes up here to describe the different types of definitions. And I'm trying to experiment with what side of the board that I want to stand on because I'm still getting used to this instructional video thing. It's kind of fun. Obviously, parenthetical and sentence definitions are definitions that you're readily acquainted with. So if you have a document in which there's a word that isn't commonly understood, often that is then defined following that word in a parenthetical definition. It's just a short little definition in parentheses following the word, usually just a few more words, like a phrase, that describes that word. Sentence definitions are what you're used to from the dictionary. You have a simple word that doesn't take very much to describe it, and so you just have a one-sentence definition for the word. These often also appear in technical documents. When you have words that are not often understood, sometimes a sentence definition will suffice. But then there are cases in which we have complex concepts, complex technology, complex information that can't be defined adequately in a parenthetical or a one-sentence definition. Now, notice my use of the word adequately, because certainly we could define something, say like nanotechnology, in a sentence definition. We could easily come up with one sentence that gives a very basic concept of what nanotechnology is. It would be very basic, and it wouldn't be a very good definition, but we could do it. But that's the kind of a thing, a technology that is as complicated and will have as many uses as nanotechnology when we're going to want an expanded definition. And expanded definitions are quite common in technical writing. And we've already really done one of them, because a set of process instructions is really a expanded definition. It's expanded, multi-step, long explanation about something. So say it's like peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So the process instructions describe how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and by definition also then describe what is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We're going to go on to a slightly different level of process type documents in a future assignment, in which you're going to create a process or product description, which, as opposed to describing how to do something, which is what process instructions were, you're going to describe how something works. And this is slightly different than specifications, which is also described in the same chapter, which is a different kind of technical document that's very common in the business field, particularly in architecture and construction fields, because specifications will ensure that customers are getting what they want. So they'll go through the different attributes, say, of a building, the different characteristics, features of a building, to ensure that the customers get all the features that they've asked for and that the architects have ensured that they're going to provide, and also all the safety features of the building, for instance. Then that would be in the specifications. Specification documents are very common, in fact essential, in architecture and other similar fields. Certainly engineering and a lot of those kinds of fields, engineers create a lot of specifications documents. I'll probably spend some time talking about my work with Whirlpool, in which I help them do bill of process. So sort of manufacturing process or repair process documents that describe really how something works, and in some cases how to do something. So those are specific kinds of documents. But what I want to talk about today is your assignment to write an expanded definition. And I specifically mentioned nanotechnology. Oh, this is not going to make any sense to any of the rest of you, because I got students coming into this classroom. So I already specifically mentioned nanotechnology because it's in the textbook. So here we have the textbook of our chapter on expanded definitions, which is chapter 18. And after describing all the different kinds of strategies you use to develop a document for an expanded definition, one of the examples is nanotechnology. So I'm going to have you choose from 4 different technologies that we could read about in a book called Radical Evolution, which is a supplemental text for this course and could be used as extra credit. And it describes these 4 technologies, which I'll talk about in a separate talk. So, this will be a separate video for those. All right, so an expanded definition will go into more depth about a concept, or in this case, a technology, and attempt to define it. Okay, so you get to pick from 4 different technologies, but for the expanded definition assignment, you can't choose nanotechnology. So the other technologies would be robotics, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering. Now, for our final assignment this semester, nanotechnology comes back because you won't have a sample of it, so you could choose that technology for your final assignment. All right, so these are the different strategies that are listed in the book for how to develop a document that's an expanded definition, all right? And I believe the assignment stipulates that you have to use 4 of these strategies to develop your document, plus at least 1 visual, which is why I have these boxes drawn over here, as I want to talk a little bit about design, saving the reader's time, which, is like a pet peeve with me. All right, so I starred 2. I put stars next to 2 of these strategies because you're definitely going to use these strategies in developing your document. Actually, I'm going to add a 3rd star because these 3 are pretty important. And you really can't do a good expanded definition without these 3. And these 2 work together, which is why I kind of put them together. So negation is a very good strategy for defining your technology by describing what it is, by describing what it's not. So negation is a strategy by which you describe what the other things that are similar to your technology, and then you further define your technology by describing what it's not. So for example, if I'm doing artificial intelligence, I can describe what artificial intelligence is by describing what it is not. So, differentiating it from basic computer processing. A calculator is not necessarily a good example of artificial intelligence, but Siri on your iPhone is one of our current examples of pretty cutting edge artificial intelligence. Not fully conscious, probably went past the Turing test, but pretty good, and a lot better than what we had in the 70s when I was a kid. So usually negation is used in combination with comparison contrast. That's my abbreviation for comparison contrast. I didn't write it all out. Because as you're describing what your technology is by describing what it is not, you're also comparing and contrasting. So that's both strategies at the same time. So it's kind of taken care of. And then obviously you're going to use lots of examples. Lots of examples will illustrate what your technology is and how it can be used. Nanotechnology, and the example in our book, just scratches the surface of all the different uses that nanotechnology can be put to as it's a developing technology. And we already have it, by the way. It's this book was written 10 years ago, so there's been 10 years of advances in these technologies, nanotechnology being one of them, since this book was written. And the technologies were already obviously being developed before the book was written, otherwise the book wouldn't be written. So, that makes sense. So the other strategies are etymology, so word origin, the origin of the word, that's what that means. History, you can do some digging and some history, so obviously, as you can figure out, your document's going to require the use of source material from outside sources. Operating principle, you might have that. An operating principle, you can read exactly what that means in the textbook. Parts, you might have parts, though, something like nanotechnology would have all sorts of different applications, and so that all the, they wouldn't always have the same parts. It can be used in a lot of different ways, such as like smart fabric would be very different than nanobots that you would inject into your bloodstream. for example. Required conditions certainly might come into play with the technology you choose. Certainly nanotechnology shares the characteristic that it's all very, very small on a molecular level, actually. And then I already talked about examples. All right, so briefly, as I'm a little over what I consider the short video time, I want you to start thinking about design, and I'll probably do a separate video on this, and that's why I kind of broke our discussion into two parts, where you're going to create a definition framework. You're going to kind of show me your plan for how you're going to organize the document. But you also think about the design and saving the reader's time. So this means, maybe you have a visual, and then maybe the next visual will be over here, right? And you'll have some text. Maybe this text is more blocky, but then here you'll have text, that's kind of in list form, and then maybe you'll have some more blocky text, so that the eye can move around in the document. It has sort of a scan design feature, right? And don't have, so then maybe you have a big visual, and then maybe you have a littler visual here, so maybe you have some blocky text, maybe you have some list here, maybe you have a separate box over here with some text in it. So think about that. And of course, it's all going to be organized with headers. You're going to break up your text in labeled sections. So I'll probably talk about that in the next video. I got to teach another class here. So hey, second instructional video. Are you excited? Yeah. That's okay. And yes, I normally dress like this.